Hey, what's going on, YouTube? It's the Punisher. I know I haven't made a wrestling video in a very long time, but I've had a couple things on my mind about what's been going on with the WWE specifically that I want to talk about. First thing I want to talk about is the WWE's next pay-per-view called Hell in a Cell, where every match will be inside Hell in a Cell. That actually sounds pretty familiar. That sounds a lot like TNA's Lockdown pay-per-view, where every match is inside the 6 sides of steel cage. Interesting. And yes, I know that WWE had Hell in a Cell first. I know that. I realize that. And that's why the Hell in a Cell was so special. Because it was this, to quote Jim Ross, demonic structure that we only got to see once in a while back in the day. And now we see it almost every other pay-per-view for their main rivalry they have going on. And then they make an entire pay-per-view off of the Hell in a Cell match. Wow. I mean, on top of the fact that it's a blatant copy of TNA's Lockdown pay-per-view, the Hell in a Cell has really lost almost all of its specialness, I guess. It's not a big deal anymore. I remember back near the end of the Attitude Era when they had maybe 1 or 2 Hell in a Cell matches a year, and it was a big deal among wrestling fans. It was like, oh my god, they have so-and-so in a Hell in a Cell match at this pay-per-view. It's going to be awesome, you gotta watch it. Now it's like, oh, another Hell in a Cell match between 2 main event wrestlers, big deal. They did that 2 months ago. It's not a big deal. It's going to end up the same way anyway. And so, to me, it's a shame that WWE chose to ruin such a special match within their realm of matches just to rival TNA when they don't need to do that. WWE has such a huge lead over TNA that they don't need to do anything to rival them at this point, because TNA, as good as they are, has not gained enough of a lead for them to be a major threat. Okay, and the next thing I want to talk about, and most importantly, WWE's guest host program that they've had going on for the last couple months. I understand what this is trying to achieve. I understand the point, and in some cases, it really is very cool, like this past Monday with Cedric the Entertainer. I thought that was hilarious. Cedric the Entertainer is a major name in show business, and the WWE's main deal is entertainment. They go hand in hand. It's perfect, and I thought Cedric did a very good job. That was good. However, there are 2 names that have come up in this guest host business that really bother me, that seriously bother me. Bob Barker, who was the guest host a couple weeks ago, and the guest host for this upcoming Monday, the Reverend Al Sharpton. Yes, I know that Bob Barker's episode is done, and he did a good job and it was entertaining. I know that. But Bob Barker does not... There's no tie-in to wrestling at all. None. I mean, The Price is Raw, having Santino, Jillian, IRS, and Chris Jericho compete in pricing games, giving away cars for winning matches. Like the WWE superstars need more cars. my biggest complaint especially with the guest host next week, the Reverend Al Sharpton, who has absolutely nothing to do with wrestling at all. Absolutely nothing. Zero. My biggest complaint is the sport of professional wrestling has been around for decades. Decades and decades and decades. And there are decades and decades and decades of legends within the business. People who made the business into what it is today. That many people who have been wrestling fans for many years, such as myself, would love to see come back for one episode and be back on camera to give wrestling fans the chance to see how they are and what they're doing and see if they still can get the same reaction that they used to back when they were superstars. And I know that one of the first names that y'all are thinking of is Hulk Hogan. No thank you. I don't want to see him ever again. Ever again. Thank you. But people like Macho Man Randy Savage. Okay? People like Bret Hart. People like who are some others? Oh man. People like Paul Bearer. People like Jimmy Hart. Okay? There are decades of legends in this business who people would love to see come back to guest host an episode of Raw because they're actually part of the business. They actually have had something to do within the business. Unlike the Reverend Al Sharpton, who has run for president and done all of these things that have nothing to do with professional wrestling in and of itself. It's, all things considered, it's a bit insulting to wrestling fans like myself to see people like Bob Barker and Al Sharpton coming to Raw and having the opportunity to act, to quote unquote act as the manager for the day, when you have these decades and decades of these legends who know the business, who've been in the business, and who people would love to see come back. And I think that if they did something like that, if they brought back Randy Savage or Kevin Sullivan or Kamala, maybe not Kamala, you would get a lot more of the old wrestling fans who have stopped watching the product. You would get them back instead of just these random people tuning in just to see the ridiculousness of the Reverend Al Sharpton on Monday Night Raw. And it's ridiculous. I think it's a big mistake, and I hope that since they want to keep this going to WrestleMania, I hope that they don't embarrass themselves too much leading up to that.